Incredible. So at this time, the Saints being a smaller neighborhood, you mentioned Folks and People. Folks and People is 1978. Um, the Saints, what year did y'all align as People? Was that already in place when you moved to the neighborhood?
No, no. When everybody, the only clique I ever knew of, and if I may, I can be corrected, the only clique I ever knew, and the only gang that I ever knew of that was renegade, truly renegade on the street, I know on the south side was the Saints.
Wow.
The
Okay.
Saints, the Saints, in my day, the Saints, and before me, when you went to the joint, you rode folks. So I was one of those folks.
Interesting. So that's why it was
Okay. So
normal for you
then,
to know SDs.
well, I became, when I became a Saint, I basically became a Saint in Seward School, basically. And officially right into that summer and then right into the high school. But I hung with the SDs at the school.
Right.
And so I became close to them. So I developed, like a bond between us, even though we fell off and we had a problem. I still felt a bond towards them. I still dealt with a few of them. Oh, I knew Fingers before he got killed. I knew Fingers when he was a V boy. Then he became SD, White Boy Fingers. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with him.
I've heard
Okay,
the
I
name.
knew him. I knew him before. He's actually, I mentioned him in my book. I knew him before he became an SD. He was a D boy from Bridgeport.
Yeah.
So yeah, so yeah, I had a bond with them, even with the folks in general, because at that time I liked the concept of the devil. My nickname was Devil, um, and I was there was so much stuff going on in my crib, man, with my dad that I just became like an atheist.
Yeah.
And I felt it was more to my liking and my thought and my ideology to be towards, devils and
Of course.
pitchforks and that kind of thing, and to be ungodly because I felt, man, because this dude here, he's my beating up my mom, beating me up, beating up the rest of the kids, man. That where, I just stopped believing in anything,
Of course.
and I became rebellious against that. So that attracted me to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is common.
Yeah.
Especially, uh, Chicago is a fairly religious city. There's a lot of beautiful
Hmm.
churches. Um, there's
Yeah.
mosques. It's not
Yeah.
predominantly Christian. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think there is, if your family embodies something, there's the dark side, these kind of concepts. This is I think been going on for many, many years where kids kind of find themselves through rebelling against the norm, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, when you gotta, it was like, man, I'm just like this guy that we call dad at home. He's a brutal individual, and this is why how I became brutal on the street. You know what I mean? There
yeah,
was really not much on the street because this dude used to beat us almost to death. So by that time, you became, like you're beating on a donkey. I don't feel nothing. You know what I mean? So, and I said, where's a guy? Where's a guy? God, send somebody to do something to this guy. That's why I plotted on killing him a couple of times at age of 14. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I said, no, there can't be a God to allow this guy to do this and allow the Israelis to do what they do to our people. So I just became rebellious against, uh, you know, the God in general. And I
All of it.
just, yeah, exactly. And to me, to be rebellious against God would lean more towards the devil. And what's with the devil? Satan,
Yeah, nah,
disciples, pitchforks. You understand what I'm saying? So I
absolutely.
felt I was more into that than the other thing. You know what I mean?
Um, so ironically, the saints, the imagery of the saints, is the exact opposite of that.
Exactly, exactly, exactly,
um,
exactly. There used to be a bar in out south in the middle of the right off the forest preserves there with Archer and 190 something or whatever them here.
mhm.
And I used to always pass it, and it had big old sign. The name of the bar was Saint Sinners, and it had a pitchfork in between it. And
Yeah,
I loved that sign, man. And that's my idea of, and that's why, realistically, if you ever at one point you would ask me, I was always said Saint Spanish Gangster Disciples. You know what I mean?
right,
And
right.
that's actually, we had a branch like that was started by some of the guys who were older than me on 87th and Houston. A lot of people don't know that.
No, I mean I actually found because 88th in Houston is known as the Southside motherland of the SGDz. To
Exactly.
this day, I found a 87th in Houston tag. It was a marker tag, but it was the Saints, and it had two pitchforks. Um,
Exactly. Yeah, and that's who started that branch, were Saints. It was Hondo, Tutsi, Rallo, Leo. These were, I knew these guys. We used to go spend the nights over there. You know what I mean? And that's before any of this stuff. I'm talking about the early 80s,
absolutely.
83, 83, 84, 85. And then I got locked up in 85, and that's when things started to turn.
So, when you joined, who would you put as the main enemy that y'all went up against?
Latin Souls and Tutu Boys.
So at that time, it was Latin Souls and Tutu Boys.
Definitely Latin Souls, especially. Equally the same, Latin Souls and Tutu Boys. Tutu Boys from 51st.
Right. So the
Yeah,
Razas were not on.
there was no Raza.
They were not on 48th at that point.
There was no Raza at the time. I think in general in Chicago, I think La Familia on 18th Street became La Raza.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's
The La Raza started popping up about probably 85, 86 when I was in the joint. I met two Razas. Two Razas. Actually, one of them became their chief down the line. He's a good friend of mine, Beto. Um,
that's incredible.
uh, yeah, so I was in the joint with him. Good brother, good dude. But at the time, there was really no beef with the Saints and Ras. It was totally different. But anyway, we were folks. We weren't beefing there, anyways. But the 48th Street boys, who were from 48 and Loomis, flipped Rasa.
Right. And so that would have been mid 80s.
That would have been probably a little further. Yeah, probably 86, late 86, 87, because when I left in 85, there was no Rasa there. When I came back in 87, there was Rasa there. So it happened somewhere in the middle of all that.
Incredible. I mean, the blocks changed rapidly.
Rapidly, yeah.
I remember a Saints branch in Bridgeport.
Yeah, I was in the joint for that. I really couldn't talk too much. Saints of 28th, I believe.
Yeah, there was
But yeah, I
Droopy.
was in the feds.
Yeah.
Yeah, my guy Droopy, man, he's a good brother. Good
Yeah,
brother.
I
Yeah.
talked to him about it a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
they went at it with everybody. you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, 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 yeah. When all this stuff was happening, I was locked up in the feds. I fell February 11th, 1992, and
Okay.
I was gone till May 4th, I believe, 2004.
Wow. 12 years.
Yeah, yeah,
So, two names that I always hear about, and a big part of this is, I go out of my way not to incriminate anybody,
yeah.
all that. But two names that you hear about, Butcher maybe in
Rabbi in
the
my day.
maybe the
No rabbi.
60s, so before you. Okay.
Yeah, before me,
But
before
Butcher
me. But
Butcher is more your
Butcher
generation.
flowed through. But there was Spook. He was Butcher's age. That was gone years ago. Spooky G. A few other ones that were still lingering around. Of course, the Patak brothers, but they were after Butcher. But they were up there in age. They'd be right now.
Yeah.
The oldest one would probably be in his 60s right now. But they all three of them passed away. Rest in peace. But yeah, Butcher definitely. Rabbi, that's somebody that probably wasn't even in the neighborhood at the time.
Yeah, so I mean Butcher is a storied name too, a respected name. Um
Yes,
and that's another thing too. There was a lot of so is it when you were a shorty there was still a lot of white saints.
there was definitely some. There was some. There was but they weren't like active. Like Butcher stayed active, rest in peace, for a
Yeah.
long time. And when I was gone away, I couldn't tell you too, because when I went away, he had just not too long before that came home. Um, and then I was gone for that long period. But yeah, there was still some, like I said, Spooky, Spook. There was a few other ones, hard to remember their names, but the Patak brothers definitely. They were Polish.
Right. But your
Yeah.
generation that was the start of there it being predominantly Hispanic.
Even before, the generation before me, and probably slightly before them, you had a lot of individuals who had been saints for a long time, and they were Hispanics.
Um so your first time in county jail, did you go to the joint from county out the gate or did you have a couple stays in county before that?
Well, I did. I know I didn't have too much stays in the county. I had more stays like in the Audi home a bit. But
Yeah.
when I when I went into the county, I wasn't there that long, and the county was a much different place. You didn't have all them divisions then, mainly Division 1, Division 5, Division 6. But luckily I wound up in Division 1. It's kind of better because the those cell doors, the bars, they don't lock, so it's better than that. But I shipped out not long after they got quick.
What was the first joint that you went to?
I went like everybody else, Joliet.
Joliet back then was where you
Was
basic
intake. They
yeah.
had the annex. You spent a week or two in the annex. They processed you. They did all that stuff, and then from there they shipped you across to to Joliet itself, where they had the East House and the West House. You stayed in the East House till you got ready to ship out.
So
And that's where you got designated.
and so you at this point the Saints they're not folks anymore.
N- No, at this point, the Saints were never folks on the street, especially 45th.
Right.
We were never folks on the street, but when you went to the joint, we rode folks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's Yeah, and I was actually the last one of that
So you're saying that that on the streets there was always a maintaining of Renegade.
until they hooked up with the Kings in like late '90s, summer '90s, somewhere around there.
Okay. Um
Yeah, then that's when they were people on the street. But my whole time from uh, while everybody throughout the early '80s into the mid '80s and into the late '80s, the Saints were basically renegade. Saints of 45th were renegade on the street.
what was prison like back then?
Oh man, it was different, bro. It was smooth, bro. I mean, we basically ran the joints per se, not bogusly. I mean, there was so much the staff ran. Back then, bro, the staff wanted to be your friend, man. Things were carried differently. There was a lot of, a lot. There was repercussion, man. You did something, you were gonna get dealt with, man. You couldn't even check in because somebody would check in after you
Yeah.
to PC. You know what I mean? And they get you in PC. It
Crazy.
was it was smooth to do time because the inmates basically had the respect of the staff, and the staff didn't disrespect the inmates, which who were really convicts back then. And there was a code of silence, and uh, a lot
Respect
of
for the
discipline, a
structure.
lot of discipline, a lot of discipline, a
Yeah.
lot of discipline, a lot of discipline.
Did you did you ever run into any, notable names when you did time? Um, you
You
know,
know what? I ran into, I mean, in Fontaine from the GDs, ran into Freddie from the Jivers. He was holding it down for the Jivers. You run into people, Fly that killed the alderman from 2-6. He was a 2-6. I mean,
Yeah.
all kinds of people. Sometimes it's hard to remember, but you read all kinds of people. Like Beto, he becomes the chief of Terrazas and so on and so on. You just all types of people, bro.
Yeah. Was there, were you free, was the structure so intact that you were free to interact with anybody that you wanted to, or was there certain, individuals that you just couldn't get to and talk to? Uh, was moving in prison, it was very, structured by rank and whatnot.
As far as when you were talking about within the organizations.
Within the organizations, like in terms of like if there is somebody who was a higher up, was that somebody that was openly interacting with everybody else, or
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. I mean, nobody played that thing where you could, but I mean, there was certain chain of command that you took. If it was an issue, you don't take it to that individual. You take it through the chain of command.
of
It's
course?
dealt with through committeemen, and and climb straight up. I mean, that's the way it was dealt with, and that was respected, and that's the way it was done. But as far as someone, a guy who's holding something down, you're free to talk to him, whatever, you know what I mean. But it's just when it came to nation business, you had to go through the chain of command.
Were you seeing, this plays into your story later on, but were you seeing organizations like the Vice Lords and the Blackstones, El Rukins? Were they practicing Islam? Were they Muslim at that point?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. When I went to the state joint the first time, man, I met a white guy named Ed Hanna, white guy, very smart in law. And to my surprise, this dude was a Muslim. He became a Muslim in the joint. Back then, Islam wasn't like it is now in those joints. It was scattered, and mainly the Islam was being practiced was the Blackstone Islam and the Vice Lord Islam, which is basically
More
not the
science.
Islam exact, the Moorish Science Temple of America. Well, it's not the Islam, Orthodox Islam. Let's put it that way.
Right, right.
It was totally different. It wasn't as strong as it is now. Let's put it that way.
Was is it safe to assume more science? Is that like Islam adopted to American
No.
lifestyle?
That's to be honest with you. I mean, I don't want to disrespect
Of
nobody's
course.
religion. Uh, that's their belief. They believe it's right, and they believe it's good and it's great, and God bless their hearts. But it's not Orthodox Islam. It's more nationalistic
Okay.
than, you understand what I'm saying.
Of
It's
course.
it's a national identity type movement with the Moors. But when you talk about Orthodox Islam, the Islam that came out of the land called Hijaz, what we call now Saudi Arabia, is that's not that Islam.
Right. I mean the core of Moorish science is basically saying that the root of man is a different area than what you're saying, anyways. Correct.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. I don't know too much about their teachings, but I do know they have their little Quran thing that takes some verses from the Quran and they add their stuff into it. I do know that it's not Orthodox Islam, and it's more nationalistic than anything else. It's kind of like the nation.
Of
It's
course.
it's a nationalist movement. More power to them, but it's not Islam, not
Yeah. I
Islam
mean,
that
so
came from
so
Arabia.
the NOI is more in line with that way of thinking
And
than traditional Islam.
they're still way off as far as Orthodox
Of
Islam.
course.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Chicago was a hotbed for that. Still is.
Yes. Yes.
Um, which is its own conversation. Always
Yeah.
something that's been interesting to me. The first gangs that I was ever around were Four Corner Hustlers and conservative vice lords.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, they had adopted these things and these teachings and spoke some Arabic. Um, really only specific sayings that were in their literature. Um,
Yes.
but it was always very fascinating to me. Um,
Yeah.
and it was, I think it was a perceived way for militants within their group, you know,
Hmm.
um, deeper than, just gang laws, so to speak.
Yes.
Um, so you parole, what year do you parole when you come out of the joint?
1980. I paroled January something 1987.
And what is, has the crack epidemic hit Chicago at this point?
The just cocaine in general. The crack had been, um, yeah, it was hot and heavy, but cocaine in general was hot and heavy then.
So what is, do you come home to a different Chicago? Like, did you look around and say, this is,
I did, but not that much different. It was noticeable on several fronts. On the drug dealing front, it was noticeable there that a big change had come about. The gang, there was a slight difference in that there was a little more, seemed to be a little more starting of gunplay.
yeah,
Uh, La Raza had popped up. Um, just not drastic change within the gang community. Oh, yeah, there was. Um, the Latin folks were falling apart on the south side. That
right.
was by 80. That started in 86 when I was in the joint. The
D-
Latin folks concept was starting to fall apart. I believe at that time, Chino D in the wheelchair from the Maniac Disciples was warring with somebody out there, and he came on and opened a branch on 63rd towards Cal. He took his own guys, and they became Latin Disciples. Um, and then the 2-6 and the Ambrose were beefing. The Ambrose did a thing on Fairfield and shot the wrong guys, so two boys got killed. Now it was Ambrose, two boys, 2-6. They were starting to fight each other.
it's
You know
out
what
of
I mean?
control.
That started in like in '86.
Wow. Okay, so,
Mm.
I mean, there's a lot, I have a lot of, a lot of the cats that follow the channel and follow the Instagram account. That's one of the big questions. They're like, what is, you say, some of these organizations say folks, but all their enemies, everybody that they're blanking on a wall is
It's
folks,
folks.
you know?
Yeah.
So it's been like that for a
Well,
long time.
it wasn't like that, man. Before I went to the joint, before that stuff broke out in '86, it started between the 2-6 and the Ambrose, and it happened on 63rd and Campbell. I believe it was an argument over a girl or something. Somebody disrespected a girl, and I believe that Ambrose pulled out a pistol and shot a 2-6 or vice versa. And then there was a house party on Fairfield at 64th, and uh, I believe the 2-6 went there and shot into the party. They wound up hitting two, two boys, and I think SD or somebody got hit and a girl and stuff like that. And now and it just ignited from there. You know what I
Wow.
mean? Ignited from there. But before that, bro, I'm telling you, you could drive down any neighborhood, bro, and you'll find souls as these two boys, 2-6, all right there together, all right
Yeah.
there, hanging out. And any neighborhood you would go to SD neighbor, and the SDs and the 2-6 were tight,
Yeah. I mean, 2-6
really
disciples.
tight, man. Yeah, 2-6. I mean, if you messed with the 2-6, the same disciples we were talking about, 2-4, 2-1, 18, they were right there. Same with the 2-2 boys. And if you did the same with the same disciple, the 2-6 were there, and the 2-2 boys were there. The Cobras and the Maniacs were right there for each other. Maniac Campbell boys, they were there for each other. IGs, Jivers, Stylers, Lovers. They were all of them were there for each other, man. It was just go to any neighborhood and find all kinds of dudes there. And when that stuff just crashed like that, man,
Chaos.
it's just like a domino effect, man.
Yeah. Um, what year did, and I won't punish you with back of the yards history, but what
Mm.
year would you give the 2-6 from 47th and Damon?
Uh, let me see. I got out in '87, and they were there. I would say '87, '88.
Yeah, there's a
And they weren't on Damon yet. They were on Winchester at the edge of my neighborhood, a block that we really never went to because that was Damon Field right there. And it was
right.
predominantly white people in that. So there was, it ain't cool to go hang out right there because it's the edge of the neighborhood. There ain't nothing. It was a dead block
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that neighborhood where the 26 are right now was a predominantly white neighborhood, even as my neighborhood was changing over, and the next neighborhood, which meaning south of 47th between Ashland and Damon, was changing. That neighborhood stayed predominantly white because it's a pretty clean neighborhood. Newer bungalows in there. If you get in there by the tracks, it was still predominantly white, quiet neighborhood. So they kind of started out at Winchester in 47th.
Right. Okay. Okay. I always hear a name from over there. There was a white boy named Danny Spain. That's one of the main names that I always hear about when it comes to 47th.
Yeah,
Um,
what's his nickname?
God, see, that's what I
It's
always.
not Spook, is it? Spooky or Spook or something?
He's a big white boy. So the reason that I mean, at this point, he is a known federal informant. At this point, um,
He's a what?
a known rat. You know,
Oh,
he ended up working. So, in the many years that I've been running around, he was no good. You know, um,
it's probably the same guy. One of my guys had a case on one of them guys, right?
yeah.
It was a body. It was a body, and I went to court with him, and so I go in the courtroom with him, and my guy says, man, this dude right here, man. And I said, oh, good guy, he's a white kid, kind of a little bit big. Uh, Bro, he went and got the state's attorney. He's still there, cracked the back door. He's pointing at me. And the
Wow.
prosecutor came and told me I had to leave the courtroom.
Oh, for intimidation of a witness.
You know, I had to leave the
Wow.
courtroom, bro. I had to leave the courtroom.
Yeah.
Yep,
You
yep.
know, his name might have been Spooky. I always knew him.
Might have
Uh,
been spooky,
those
bro.
that I knew
Spooky. He
did.
was. He was. If that's the guy, I know for sure that incident happened with me. Whatever
Right.
else he done, because I'm gonna be honest with you. By that time, I was like kind of seeing where this was going, and I had a bad taste in my mouth from '84. I tried to do something with some tutu boy and a soul man, and they ratted on me, and the cops arrested me, and I was like, wait a minute, and I sent word to them dudes that going to Fury High School at the time, like, hey, what's up with this, man? What are you doing? This is we bang, bro. We don't get them people involved to drop the charges, and he wouldn't drop the charges, bro. And then he wound up killing a little boy, the first little boy being killed in the city of Chicago, and they dropped the case on me. I went to
Wow.
51st, which was where you first start, and then they would send it to the county for attempt murder, 2 attempt murders. And when I went up there, the state's attorney says, Your Honor, we'd like to drop the case. The victim in this case is in Cook County Jail for the murder of a 9-year-old boy.
Unreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So when I saw that, it was '84. I'm like, man, what? It's just, it's so that the rat game didn't just start. It's been going on for a while. It's always been there,
the whole
but
time.
not like this, and not like that thing I saw in '84 for a banger of golden point fingers and arrest you, and no, and he refused. A girl, I sent him a message with a girl, security. She went to school with him, and I told her, hey, tell this dude what's up. He needs to drop the charges. Him and his cousin. His cousin, he said, I didn't even file no charges. He was a soul. The other cousin was a tutu boy. He said, I'm not dropping shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I read some books. You know, some gaylords and some royals have both written books about their life on the street on the north side, the northwest side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, they talked about that snitching was normalized. You know, as long as you didn't rat
Oh
on
yeah.
somebody in your own gang, it was kind of a free
But it
for all.
wasn't like that, man. It
Yeah.
wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. But it is now, and it has been for some time. And I've even, my bit in the feds was a little bit hard dealing with them dudes, man. I'm like,
Yeah.
and the thing that used to get me most is like, I'll tell him, dude, hey, bro, you're talking to that guy. You know, that guy's a rat. And he's like, man, come on, man, you can't hold on to that, man. That's it, you know, everybody's doing it. And that, I know the dude I'm talking to is not a rat.
Yeah.
He's a solid dude. And I'm like, what's going on here, bro? I mean, you know, and then you just kind of leave it alone because, but to me, I didn't deal with a lot of people in the feds, man. They'll tell you, if anybody did time with you, they'll tell you. I didn't talk to a lot of people. There was a few people I talked to, and I was hard on with my mouth about snitches. And a couple of times, I'll tell you a situation. I'm in MCC Chicago. I'm locked down in a hole in a section where they let one side out for a little while. Sometimes they let another side out for a little while. My snitch was on the 19th floor, and they put me in administrative detention. Okay, so I see one of my guys that I met in the MCC. Remember, this is after the jury found me guilty. He was from the South Side 40s, and his name, I'll skip his name, but it was South Side 40s, and he told me this guy, this Cuban from Florida, is testifying on him. And he told me the guy's name. I seen the guy on the floor, and I told these kids from black kids from Indianapolis. I said, "Hey, bro, you keep talking to that dude. That dude's a rat. He's ratting on my guy." You know, and I knew they were going to trial, so it would be right for me to warn them, right?
Of
Because
course.
he become a he become he become a witness on their case.
Yeah. Right. Right.
That's it was going on heavy in the MCC at that time. Your celly will wind up to be a
I mean,
witness
there was they
against
was
you.
they was trying to find any reason to get out, right? Like, just I got some.
Exactly, exactly. To get a time cut, whatever. So I tell the dude, and then I forget about it. So I'm locked down in my cell, but usually, you know, because they lift the little hole, the port where they give you the trays. So
Yeah.
I'm sitting down there talking to somebody through the hole, and all of a sudden, this dude, the Cuban dude, comes up to my thing. I backed up a little bit, and he said, "Hey, man, I just want to tell you, man, um, I'm not gonna do it, man, but I'm gonna tell you what I was gonna do. I was gonna go to that microwave and heat up some oatmeal, man, and put a bunch of honey in it and throw it at you through the door."
Wow.
I swear to God, this is the rat dude.
the
I'm
rat,
like,
the rat
the
was
rat, this
gangster
is
with
the
it.
rat was to no, this is the rat telling me that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what the because he could have threw it at me through the port, you
Yeah.
know?
Of course.
But he didn't want to catch a case. He didn't want to get caught up. He's here to testify to get out of jail. He don't want to get caught up. So but he's telling me, man, you can't be telling these dudes. Dude came and told me what you told him. And I said, this piece of shit, you know what I mean? I'm telling you to look out for you. You go tell the snitch. Where this dude he could have melted half my face off. You know what I
Wow.
mean? He could have heated that oatmeal up so thin and so hot, man. He could have threw it at with honey. He would have threw it at me. Would have ran my skin right off my face.
So you at this point, I mean, you started to learn you couldn't be around nobody. You really had to stick to
No,
yourself.
exactly, man.
So
Exactly, exactly.
let's talk about this. Like, you come out of the joint. Do you parole? I mean, when you get out of the joint, do you go back to the block, or are you like, I'm done with the gang banging? Um,
Well, I came back to my neighborhood. I had learned a trade in jail. I really wanted to do right. I was already growing up. I had been to the joint with a bunch of dudes that I was fighting with their guys on the street. And I'm like, man, I'm breaking bread with these dudes in here. How could I possibly get out here and be fighting with these guys? What am I supposed to see them down the block and fight with them?
of course.
Especially that the Saints were renegade. It was different if you were folks, because still there was a concept where you still neighborhoods were still cool with each other.
Right.
You know, maybe a branch of 2-6 was fighting that uh, the, these guys over here, but they were still cool with the SDs. Let's say from 2-1 and 2-4 and 18th. But but I said, man, so most of our people we'd be fighting in the area would be like folks. So I'm like, man, I was folks with these. What am I gonna do? Come out here? I still was functioning here and there. You know, when needed be, if I'm out there and something happens, I'm gone. You know what I mean?
Of course.
But I wasn't really out there like that, man. And when I got out, the dope game was so deep. My guy, my best friend, one of my best friends, he was a neutron. In my hood though, he was getting big money, man. He tried to kind of pull me in a couple of times, and I'm good, bro. I'm good. I was working. I had learned how to be a body man, and I had a job as a body man. I was making halfway decent money, and he was making a ton of money. And but this guy, me and him used to shit. We used to go. Whatever we had to do to get money for gas to cruise all night and just chill, man. Smoke some weed. I'm not really a big drinker, but we would just cruise all night in the city. Back then, man, 5 gallons of gas gave you a half a tank.
Oh,
Five
absolutely.
dollars would have gave you half a tank.
So you, what's the what what pulls you into the dope game? Like what's the
Well, here's what happened, man. I was riding my guy, the same guy I'm talking about, that was getting all that money. I took his Harley for a ride, man, and some goofy person in front of me stopped with no stop. Remember, now they have stop signs everywhere. Back then they didn't. There might be one, two stop signs in the neighborhood. And I'm cruising. I get to 43rd and Wood, man. I happen to glance left, looking south down the block by my house, and I look back, and this clown, man, in a 79, 78 caddy, uh, uh, DeVille, stopped in front of me. You know, the big back bumpers, man. I tried to stuff it. Broke my leg. I broke my leg. I lost my job. Of course, I couldn't work. My leg was broken in four different places between my knee and my ankle. So I was out of commission for a while, man. And then I went, and, he would come pick me up. And it was on his bike that I almost died, right? So he would come pick me up. We'd go cruising, man. I just slowly trickled right into that, man. He got popped. He already had a case for half a pound or something of cocaine. And he was fighting it. He lost the case, and I had already been getting into this stuff. We were kind of doing it together, and then I just basically uh, started my own thing when he was gone. You know what I mean?